So, hope everybody's doing well. Like I said, this first week of August seems like we've been doing this a while. As Brandon, as I shot that note out, man, we've been doing this since April. It's kind of crazy, and so I love this group. It's always the highlight of my week, and super fun to get everybody together. So I'm going to walk through today. I'm just going to walk through kind of where we are on, the manifesto and the work groups and kind of the organizational structure, and bring everybody up to speed. Thought that could just, maybe elicit some, conversation and thoughts. And then the other announcement I've got is that Mike Tushman, the professor at Harvard Business School, he and I did a recent case study on Deloitte Pixel. Pretty excited about that. And so he's offered to actually teach that case study to our group, which is going to be super fun experience. It's really interactive and really fun. So we don't have a date yet, but we'll make sure that everybody gets kind of the case study beforehand, and we can kind of run it like a regular HBS kind of case study, classroom, and get you guys interactively involved. It's a great case study. If people haven't seen it, we'll put it up in the chat. But it's, I think it was some good progress, and, the one and only Balaji is a star on it. So yeah. Hey, listen, Chris Stanton, anything you've got from your work that you've been working on you'd like to talk about before we get going?
Hi, John. I'm a little Zoom fatigued, so I'm going to stay off of the video for now.
Yeah, that's great, man. I love that. I get that way every day.
I think everyone's kind of in the same boat. I think that there's a bunch of exciting stuff going on with what we've been talking about and with the sprint. So I am mostly interested in seeing what comes out of the call today. I have one new project going on that I'm pretty excited about, however, which is a new experiment with one of the online platforms where what we tried to do in the experiment was to ask people in terms of messages when employers were trying to hire to consider using some best practices that we wanted to test. And two of those practices were one, to consider sort of smaller projects to try and test people out, or to test the contractors out in terms of their fit, their, screening, things like that. So, at least in the way that I tell people to try and use open talent, it's design small projects to see if people who you're trying to deal with, especially if you're not using contests, can actually do the larger job. And then the second thing that we attempted experimentally was to provide a message to say, maybe you want to consider multiple bidders on some of these projects, and to give them some small milestone tasks, or to give them some smaller tasks before scaling up. And it turns out that the feedback from this experiment suggested that the people who received these messages had one of two reactions. One was, oh, I hadn't considered that before, that's good advice. Or the other was, that takes too much time. I don't want to go forward and do things. I kind of know what I'm doing. And so I think that the different responses kind of corresponds with a model that I have in mind, where understanding the use of open talent really requires understanding some of the costs for the people who have to implement these solutions. And overwhelmingly, I think the cost piece swamped the responses from people that said, oh, I hadn't thought about this before. So just anecdotally, the response that said, this is going to be too costly for me personally to try and evaluate multiple people, or to really use a hiring process that kind of looks more consistent with best practices. suggests to me that one of the things that we need to be considering is reducing some of the frictions for the frontliners who have to change their behavior to make open solutions work. So I'm going to try to write up this experiment relatively soon and can share something more formal with all of you. But I thought that some of those early pieces of feedback just kind of struck me as something that I think we all kind of understand, but that raises the question of how we can sort of reduce frictions for the people who have to live this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. And I love the fact that you're always doing experimentation so quickly and, you know, so interactively. And I'm sure, you know, there are a lot of people in the group would love to contribute however we can. So anybody that, you know, wants to reach out to Chris, just, you know, hit him up on the chat, and any way to participate would be great. So awesome. Well, let's just break out and do our breakout thing. I want to do an experiment today, though. We're going to do one breakout to meet somebody new, kind of random, and then we're going to go to a second one. So just because I think it's like, I was thinking about it in the analogy of, you know, going to a networking event or a party and being able to go in and you see somebody, you know, and you talk to them for a bit and then you turn your head and you see somebody else. So let's see how that experiment works and see if there's something interesting that comes out of it. All right, Brandon, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. See y'all in a few minutes.
Two in a row, man. 2 in a row. I love that. I mean, I think it's kind of fun these conversations are definitely the highlight of the call and the day. So thanks for putting.
But John, John, I must tell you that, you know, about 80% of us are in mid-sentence when we get pulled back. So, and we join you and you're like, you're so happy that we were all pulled in mid-sentence. It's not fair. Okay. I just want to let you know.
Oh, thanks. Well, it was horrifying after I suggested Brian have his own room, and then Karin in their chat suggested maybe I should be put in a room. Literally, I went to a room and it was like 7 or 8 seconds, and I was all alone. And I thought you guys had like back channeled Brandon and put me all by myself in the corner.
Yeah.
I felt like a kindergartner who got put in the corner, facing the corner. So
poor John, it's Zoom karma.
Yeah, Zoom karma, exactly, right? You got to be super, super careful about that. Awesome. Well, thanks for everybody coming today and you know, playing around with that little experimentation. I thought what I'd do today is just kind of walk people through the deck on the progress. So, you know, obviously we've got a lot of things going on. Made some progress on the manifesto, had the copywriter do some work on that. I'll go through that. I've just put it in a little deck, and then we'll look at kind of operational structure and some of the inspiration I've taken in the last couple of weeks. And then get into the working groups and make sure everybody's kind of in the working group they want to be in, and start working towards that. So let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see if that's possible. Hold on one sec. Let me just pull up. Why is that not? Hold on. Oh, can you guys, I'm gonna escape that. Hold on one sec. I don't know why that is. Okay, oh, here we go. Okay, here's the share. Okay, go back up. All right, here we go. So first thing, Nuco, we got to come up with a name. So I have some thoughts, and we've actually created a list with a few of us, but I'm going to get that list out to everybody, and let's just do some voting and crowd. How about we crowdsource the name? Does that sound like a good idea? Kind of a crazy thought. I don't know if we can trust it, but we'll give it a go. What do you think, Steve? Oh,
I'm all about the crowdsourcing. Go for the crowdsourcing, man.
Okay, good. Well, we'll be off and running. So you guys will get a note later today on some thoughts and names, and we'll go from there. So let's jump into the manifesto. So so the person I hired to do the copywriting is Chad Walker, and Chad Walker was one of the ECD's executive creative directors at Victors and Spoils. So he helped launch that. Really understands the space. We had a lot of great debate around, you know, working through everything. So then not much changes, but let's just go through it. So the vision, we exist to activate a new way of working, one that aligns how people work with work they do, a way of working that is open and dynamic and agile. An approach we believe to be the best way to help organizations and workers achieve their potential. Well, I can't quite read it because their full potential. We exist to activate new work. Okay, let's now 1 sec here. The purpose. So purpose and objective haven't changed much. Digital technologies haven't changed much since the last version, but digital technologies have radically changed and continue to change at ever increasing rates the world we live in. But the way we work remains stubbornly an artifact of the past, stuck firmly in the industrial age. There's been some debate about that, and I think we can have some debate about that. I'm totally psyched to do that. To accomplish our vision, we must help increase the adoption of open work processes by creating a shared narrative around standardization, transparency, information security, metrics, adoption, maturity, worker benefits, and worker sustainability, benefiting everyone. Sorry about that. I've got to get, here we go. Yeah, organizations and workers alike. Okay. Any questions on so far? Okay, here are the defining principles. So we had 14 and we kind of cut it down. I think, there were some things in the defining principles that were kind of already implicit in the work we were doing, and then some things that were really tactical. And so we tried to find some middle ground. I felt like 14 were too many. So let me just read these off and, you guys can absorb those, but we believe in skill over geography, action over bureaucracy, talent over source, agility over rigidity, and networks over organizational charts. We believe that organizations using open talent at any scale will be more successful than organizations that don't. We believe that open talent will knock down the walls around gender, race, ethnicity, geography, and physical challenges that limit opportunity, bringing a new level of diversity, equity, and inclusivity to work. We believe in workers, the people who do the work, and will enable open talent careers to be passionate, fulfilling, and sustainable, and will lead the charge in creating benefits, cutting edge experiences, and lifelong learning opportunities to make that possible. We believe that widespread organizational adoption is a key accelerator, and we will work towards creating a shared industry narrative to remove friction to enterprise adoption. Number 6, we believe in and will bring clarity and definition to the open talent landscape and its language. Number 7, we believe in and will establish standards and best practices around the organization operations and adoption. So those are the kind of 7 principles that we've landed on so far. What we hold dear, we have a responsibility to create new work structures through open talent models that allow for a more geographical, ethnic, racial, religious, creative, and physical diversity for workers so that they can follow their passions, solving difficult problems for organizations while growing professionally and being fairly compensated. Okay. And then our audience hasn't changed. Small to medium business and larger enterprises, C-suite, business, HR and procurement, workers, platforms, and organizations, including policymakers, NGOs, committed to the advancement of work. And then we haven't really landed. We've got a lot of good suggestions of we know we're successful when, and I love that. I talked about it last week. I love that idea that Jerry Wynn came up with, that, it would be good to kind of have some success metrics. So let's keep thinking on that, and we can dig in, on that manifesto 7. They're there. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like we can have some benchmarks, but then we need to do research and start doing the work. And then the actual goals will be revealed from the work we do. So how does everybody feel about that? Make sense?
I think it makes sense.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's see here. Okay, organizational structure. So one of the things that I'm not sure why that popped. So one of the things I've been super inspired by is I've been trying to think about like what organizations have had the same kind of issue, right? And so I came across the United States Green Building Council. Has everybody heard of this, the council? So essentially it started in 1993. And actually I'm really excited. I'm going to talk to one of the founders next week to really hear the founding story. But essentially it started in 1993. And the idea is a bunch of folks were really interested in helping developers develop green buildings or environmentally sound commercial buildings. And so they got together, and one of the things they decided to do is focus on the LEED certification. They felt like if they could create standards that were really focused on creating, healthy places, that people would be healthier and it will make a healthier economy. So one of the things that they did essentially is created an assessment, the LEED certification assessment that companies would go through. In this case, platforms would go through, and it would get a scorecard of the assessment. And according to the rating of the assessment, you'd get certification to regular, certification, silver, gold, or platinum. This is kind of how it's set up in LEEDs. And LEEDs has been so successful that not only do they now work on kind of accreditation for commercial buildings, but they do schools and, homes, and even cities. So it's been a really incredible movement and really pushed the, forward kind of the environmental building or the green building movement. But I thought that was super interesting. And the other thing they've really focused on is education, kind of certifications of how do you know what a green building is? How do you know what LEEDs is? Mostly for the demand side, right? For architects and other folks. So that got me thinking about kind of what at the core, we have our, mission and vision, and it's awesome, but really what's a really practical way of viewing things that we can put everything, our work streams into and into a very focused small container. Because my sense is that what we want to do is really focus our efforts to start with, right? So that we can make the momentum really happen. And then once we have that momentum, we can kind of go forward and build on that momentum, but it's got to be focused to begin with. So I've really been thinking about, like, for me, we're going to increase the adoption of open talent by organizing the industry through accreditation and education, right? So the accreditation to get all the platforms on the same page, to make sure that they agree on some standards that they want to live by. Brian Pena and I've had a lot of conversations, and he's volunteered to lead that group and figure out what those standards are. So Brian, thanks for that. And, the work group that comes together. I really want to make sure that all the platforms are on that committee and can come up with the right kinds of standards for that, because it's got to be something that is additive to everybody. It can't be subtractive. It's got to be something that helps us knock down the walls of adoption, right? And make it easier for folks to adopt. I spent some time with Perry from Unilever yesterday, and she was really excited about this idea, saying that, just by the accreditation and the education tracks will really help Unilever adopt open talent platforms. So that's the accreditation. And on the education side of things, I think there's 3 areas to really focus on. One is individual certification inside organizations. And this could be along this education side of things. We could put like maturity model that we have a work stream for. There's lots of interesting work streams underneath this, right? And then obviously advocacy and awareness. The other thing that I've been really concerned with, John Healy and I had a great conversation, and he was concerned, and I think really rightfully so, and he really recommended that we stay super sharply focused to start with, because if we try to take too much of a remit of changing the way work happens in general, and not just focus on really the accreditation education, that other organizations, kind of legacy organizations, might get defensive and freak out, whether it's the American Staffing Association or some of the other things. So that's kind of the thinking that I've been doing. Certainly open to any kind of input. This is a community, and we need to decide together how this goes together. But I'm trying to think about framing things, and certainly accreditation and education is just a starting point, right? It's something we can sharpen the tip of the spear and then start on the journey. So those are some of the thoughts. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay, let me move through to structure then. So what I've been thinking about on the structure is certainly, I've been calling Council for New Work. I mean, it's open, the name's not been decided on, but we would form a 501c6, and that would be really focused on, the running this as a trade association. We'd also have a foundation, a 501c3. A couple of people have already, a couple of foundations have already reached out and offered to contribute resources to make this happen. And the best way to do that is through a 501c3. And then if we're going to focus on accreditation and education, we would, again, do an assessment with certifications for silver, gold, platinum, like we talked about. And then in education, certifications, advocacy, and awareness. Again, on the accreditation thing, the way that I kind of envision it, and certainly the committee needs to come up with it, but I think one of the things that would be really interesting to do is to be able to do assessments for the platforms, but then not make that score public, only private to that platform, and then be able to give the aggregate score on all these different, these different things we measure to each platform, so that they know where they rank compared to the rest of the industry. The other thing I've been talking about through the accreditation, and it's something that we should, that I'd like to advocate for, is one of the pillars should be customer satisfaction. And in that customer satisfaction, one of the things that might be interesting to do would be able to take the top 10 clients from each of the platforms, and in a blind way, to make sure that, the privacy is respected, that we would go out with a survey to their top clients to see what kind of customer satisfaction they have, their ranking. But likewise, it would be great to get from the demand side customers, how many, what's their budget? How many people do they work in the open talent, efforts? How many platforms they work with? So we can start creating some kind of overall numbers that we can apply to see where the industry's going. And again, one of the benefits for the demand side would be if they did the survey, they would get to see their results in a private way to the rest of the industry. Perry and I talked about that a lot yesterday, and she was really excited with the idea of, like, I'd love to compare myself to the aggregate. Like, how are companies, that are competitors of mine or the size of Unilever doing in this space? Are they using 10 platforms or 5 platforms? Are they doing 100 projects or 25 projects? What are they focused on? Where are the areas? So trying to create that kind of organizational structure to create the information flow so that everybody can get on the same page. And it's really awesome that we have, Chris Stanton and Jen from, Lish, and Chris from Harvard, and Greta from Oxford, and Jerry from Wharton. And it'd be really, really great to get those guys involved with the process of collecting the data so that we can really understand this accreditation process. So Harvard and Oxford and Wharton can do research in this area and really help facilitate some better research. So that's kind of the foundation structure, or the foundational, ideas. I've got a meeting with lawyers next week to kind of really dial this in, and I'll have some more stuff for you guys next week to consider, but just some thoughts to think about. And then what we've been thinking about is kind of this 501c3, there would be a board, and there also, I would think that it would be great to have some founding members that would help drive the strategy, both founding members, both demand side and platform side or supply side. Likewise, I think, what we would do, just like the U.S. Green Builders Association, is that certificate holders would be the platforms, and there would be an opportunity for members to be the demand side folks. And again, the 501c3 foundations can be involved in that way. But we want to create a really transparent and really lightweight structure to allow for everybody to be involved in this conversation and contribute. One of the concerns I have, I love this community, but I want to make sure we get things done and we can show progress, right? Like, and I think a lightweight structure, or the lightest weight structure we can have, the better off we'll be. So those are kind of the structural ideas and the relationships we're talking about. Again, got to sit down with the Brian Cave lawyers on next Tuesday and really figure some of this technical stuff out, but starting to go down the road of doing that. So that's the organizational structure. Any thoughts or comments on the organizational structure? No? All right.
Looks good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, man. Thanks, Andy. Okay. Work streams. So I just actually dug into the work streams that Balaji put together a couple weeks ago, and some of them were updated with names. Please still can put your name in there if you want to be involved. Would love for everybody to be involved as much as they want to be involved. No requirements at all, but just want to make sure everybody has a voice in this process. So credentialing platforms work stream, Brian suggested he'd like to take that over, and I'd love to, get some other platforms involved. And Brian said he'd be reaching out to folks to make that happen. Balaji wanted to lead the maturity model work stream, and I think that's super important in creating that kind of momentum around, around the education side of things. And then a bunch of folks on the enterprise education, we'll probably fold this in somehow to the maturity model. So have everybody kind of work on how we're going to separate that out. Same thing with the playbook for enterprise work streams. I think those are all three areas that would fall into education, and we'll just have to figure out how they get structured so everybody feels like they have ownership and the ability to participate, but not overwhelm any one group of folks. So, and then governance work stream, Karin and Dale and Freddie, got to get you involved. Diane and Rich and I talked last week, and apologies for not getting you guys involved earlier. We'll let us, I'll be in charge of this one and make sure that everybody get back on the same page after I meet with the lawyers, and we can discuss kind of where things are and get everybody's input. And then really excited for kind of marketing and communications work stream. Really appreciate, Andy and Lisa and Paul and Stacy being involved with that. Anybody else want to join with that? I think that's going to be a super important part of this. Like, how do we really create the awareness around this new work, this new way of working, and make sure that we get kind of the momentum so that people can understand there's a maturity model, and there's kind of a playbook, and there's ways to do it, and we can knock down those walls. So yeah, that's it. Well, actually the manifesto we're making progress on. And then the development work stream, I'm going through kind of straight creating structures for membership and certification. One of the things I think is super important is that it's size-based, that, somebody who, if they're either demand or supply side, if they're doing $500,000 or less, that it's really accessible, like, $1,200, $2,000, something like that, for both either the membership or the certification. And then likewise, as it scales up to $1 billion plus, there's more of a burden, but keeping it really equal to a certain percentage of revenue. Brandon pointed out a really cool model that People for Bikes has, where it's just a percentage of, it's 0.001% of sales, which I don't know if that's the right number or not, but as we work out these models, we'll have a proposal and make sure that's super transparent for the group to work through and agree upon. But, I want to make this really accessible for everybody. If you're an individual just starting on the journey and you're an entrepreneur and want to get into it, you got to be a part of the conversation. And likewise, if you're somebody who's been doing this for a long time and multi-billion-dollar company, got to have the ability to have as many people from your organization involved that you want to have involved.
Hey, John, quick question. I didn't realize I could unmute myself. What's this, basically process? If are there other people that want to be involved at this level, the group, or we kind of locked it down to this team at this point, or if there's someone really relevant that could add a lot of value at this stage, should we bring them in?
For sure.
What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I think it's, right now, my sense is let's just start aggregating. I mean, it's not something we're going to start meeting next week on. And so let's take the next couple of weeks and think if there's somebody that that would be an incredible person to have contribute, let's ask them, let's get them involved. It'd be really awesome. I think the more interesting people to get involved. I don't know, did Jara join the call today? Jara, just for instance, like Jara and I had a conversation yesterday. Steve, Jara. She's over at gsa.gov and runs citizen, science. And man, it was just crazy, the amazing points of view she had from doing this really, really great work across the government on, really updating the strategy around open talent. So, those are the kind of people. I was so excited when I met with her, and she needs to be involved, and she was excited to be involved. So again, those kind of folks would be great to have involved. Thanks, Freddie, for bringing that up. I just think we need to make, at the committee level, we need to make it open and a place for people to talk and figure out what they want to do and where they want to go. And then, I think it will be, for me, the responsibility of the work stream groups will be to come up with proposals to propose to, the board and the overall group democratically, that we can sort through where do we want to focus and how do we want to do it. So.
John, one thing that I'm thinking of a work stream that we never really thought about in the past was we need some kind of work stream around data. right? I mean, this is such a cottage industry right now that there's no common data of supply, demand, and where the employment market, full-time employment market, has become a lot more data intensive right now. There's Gartner's Talent Neuron we do just so much aggregation that's happening so that you can run some analytics. I think there's the iLabor project that Greta is running literally, and I think an ability to talk more about this sector in the construct of data versus surveys is very important to show the strength of the market to support adoption. So I think that's another thing, whether it's a separate one or we fold it into one of the work streams, I think that's one thing we should think about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. In some of the conversations I've had in the last few days, that's been central to it. I think we need to make sure, for me right now, like the place to start is to make sure we set everything up for the accreditation to collect the data in the right way. So we're creating those kind of data streams, both from the supply side, from accreditation, and then from customer surveys to create, size and scale and momentum. Certainly that's just a start, but I would hope that Greta would be willing to kind of launch in and help us design those things. But great point there, Balaji.
John, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there a work stream around, it's probably included in the playbook, but is there a work stream around the adoption of open talent and open innovation? Because usually the starting point is some kind of crisis that causes an organization to pivot and recognize that they need to think of new ways of working and be able to accelerate. And that to me is something that a lot of organizations right now are really struggling with, because they look to the world and say, how do we do this? And who has a track record in it? And which companies have been successful with that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think for me, I think that goes into the playbook, work stream. And I think that's something, you should definitely, I know you're really passionate about that and have done some work. And it'd be great if you could get involved with that one. I think it's really, really awesome.
Thanks.
Who else? Anybody else? Thoughts? No, I'm going to start calling on people. Who's first? Rich, Copsy, we had a conversation the other day, like, can't hide there, Rich. Any thoughts as we go through this process? Any kind of, you did such great work at Anadarko, and now, doing the work at Exxon, always great to hear from the demand side of what you guys need to help, help cut the friction out and scale the stuff.
I mean, I would say, everything that we're doing, I think, is aligned and is in the right direction. One note of caution, though, would be that I think in order for us to actually get wheels off the ground here, we need to maintain some focus and choose those the biggest opportunities for us to focus on first, and then all the other work streams, we've got them defined, but they may not be part of the initial
agree.
Work that we focus on. It's this
agree.
paper mache model. We got to build the foundation and then move forward, and then and continue to not forgetting about all the different players involved. So I think somebody made a comment around the talent. That's certainly another focus area or work stream.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thanks, Rich. It's a good reminder just to make sure we're, first things first, one step at a time, and get down. Don't get too excited about the end goal, but let's just make get organized and make the movement. Ashir, you've done some great work at EY. Any thoughts from your perspective?
Well, so I've been off for a couple weeks, and so I'm unpacking all of this information because, and so I'd love to see how I can participate. I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in best. But the one thing that as I think about it a little bit more is we focused on the demand side and who. Is there a work stream that needs to be focused on the supply side is the only question I would sort of pose to the group. Because I think I know it's wildly important that we get the demand right, but I also think having a voice for the candidate or the contractor, the freelancer, is something that we should take into consideration, because I think as we got a volume of those folks, it also sort of opens up more doors.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. I think one of the things that really, makes me think about is that really amazing comment that, Sheila said a couple of weeks ago, right? That only 20% of the freelancers work on platforms and the 80% don't. So I think there's something there, right? There's a tension. Like, how do we help the platforms create more momentum to capture more of that business? Because there's actually a business flow happening, but it just got to be, a way to make sure that we're all working together to make that happen. So really, really good point. Thanks. Anything else? Hey, Diane, any thoughts? You and I've had some great conversations lately on everything from names to focus and to structure. Any wisdom you can impart on us?
Yeah, no, I'm the plus one to a lot of what we've been hearing here. I think the focus that we've articulated is going to drive huge benefit to both the supply and the demand side. And it is critical to focus, to get the wheels off the ground. It's it's going to grow and evolve from here, but those areas of focus and the work streams that we've called out, I think are the right ones to get us started and to make a big impact. So,
thanks. Good.
I'm
I appreciate that. Great. Yeah, me too. I'm going to call, hey, Mark Barton, you guys wrote an amazing book, Eat Big Fish. And to me, it's one of the most important marketing books ever written. I mean, it definitely, yeah, I know, right? Crazy. It definitely fueled a lot of the work we did at Crispin. And, it's been a guiding principle as Challenger brand. So, it seems to me this organization is definitely a Challenger, brand or a Challenger organization. As you kind of contemplate what we're doing and how we're doing it, any words of wisdom from the wizard?
Well, thank you for that. I just, I've missed a few weeks, so coming back in today and listening to you talk through that was fantastic, John. I mean, just kudos to everybody here who's contributed to making that vision, mission, manifesto come alive. And I think in the spirit of Challenger Brands, a few weeks back, the last time I was on the call, there were a couple of moments where the group sort of found almost some righteous indignation about what the fuck was wrong with the modern economy that it couldn't yada, yada, yada. And I can't remember exactly how it was expressed. If I go back through the chat from a few weeks ago, I might be able to dig out the energy of that. But I wonder if, and just again, this is a marketing guy speaking about, one of the things that we're going to confront as a group here is just getting anybody to pay attention to anything, because there's just so much other priorities for anybody that's either on demand or the supply side to think about before they get to this conversation. And I'm looking for maybe just a little bit more of that heat and energy in the manifesto. It's like in the language of Eat Big Fish, we have this very simple construct. What's the monster in the story? It's like Little Red Riding Hood without the big bad wolf is a nice, comfortable walk through the woods. Right. It's the big bad wolf that makes that watchable, compelling, interesting. And I don't know what the monster in the story is. I think I've heard it articulated, but I didn't see it necessarily in the manifesto. Yeah. So that would be something to go back to.
I'd love to explore that more with you. So maybe we'll take it offline a little bit and then be able to bring it back to the group. It'd be super fun. Thanks, Mark. I love that. And I think, for me, at Crispin, when we were doing all that work, and we really based it on your philosophy, but, we had so much more momentum because we would tell clients, like, it's not about what you're for, it's about what you're against. Even if it's against, good things, right? I'm against pollution. I'm against climate change, issues. But it really, really sharpens the spear, right? It really gets you focused, and it's the monster, right, that you want to rally the troops against. So great advice. I appreciate that. Somebody else is going to say something.
Yeah, sorry, John, Andy here. So I had a call in the last couple of days from a guy who ran a very successful recruitment business, and he said to me, look, I spent 2 million quid building a platform. We couldn't get anyone to buy it. It went nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I demoed him hours. I showed him how it worked. He's like, yeah, but how are you going to do this? And very negative. Right. And I wonder if that is kind of the, the negative side of it, is looking at some of those businesses that have got the same basic idea, right? We've all got this thing like, let's make it digital, faster, AI, whatever it is. But some of us don't make it. And some of those people aren't in this conversation. And maybe we need to somehow invite them in just to learn what they did wrong, what they got wrong. That could be the big bad wolf. In the story.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, there's this complacency, right? And Balaji and I talked about it, that essentially this is just as modernization of contingent work, right? And in a way, a lot of big companies have their systems of doing that. And, and it may not be as efficient and it may not be as good, but but it works. It kind of, you stumble along. I mean, Balaji, I don't know if you want to add anything from our conversation. I thought it was really inspiring, the debate that we had.
I mean, it is interesting, right? I mean, it's always good to have a big bad wolf that kind of like motivates you, that it's chasing you. But sometimes Red Riding Hood is wearing like too tight shoes, and she's just not going anywhere because she's just executing really poorly, agnostic of whether somebody's chasing her or not. And does that make for a good story? It absolutely does not. And I think sometimes the problem is about it's just poor execution. It doesn't mean that somebody else is taking away the Steve, I saw that. That's not fair, but I agree.
I agree with that.
It's many times startups fail not because there's a bigger, badder wolf out there. It's just they execute poorly. And I think all the accreditation, awareness, education work is at least to prevent that, while we are all coming together to talk about the bigger problem. So I think it's both of them.
Great. That's a good point. Hey, Jordy Pearson, I'd love for you to make a comment. I know we've got a call scheduled, and Jordy's an investor and he's been on these calls for a while, and he just created this really amazing point of view on kind of the work from an investor point of view. Jordy, I don't know if you're able to kind of make some comments on, where we are and anything we should watch out from that perspective.
Hey, John, no, I mean, I think from our perspective, we're taking a look, as around looking at marketplaces through specific verticals with an emphasis on services to the supply side. And a lot of that is around, retention, right? From an investor perspective, it's about retention and scale. And so I think as we think about, what services and how are we positioning around bettering the freelancer themselves, not just utilization, but also, professional development, community, et cetera. I think that there's a whole world out there of, how the marketplaces can offer more and perhaps through this too. So I think our thesis is predicated around, marketplaces that not only are providing, work and incremental income, but also certifications, professional development, peer-to-peer, et cetera.
Yeah, great point of view. Thanks, Jordy. Really appreciate that. And really, really impressed with the work you're doing. It was great to read your document, in that it really crystallized a lot of the conversation that's happened. So really, I was really psyched and impressed. I know we only have a minute left. It feels like these things go so fast. Anybody want to wrap us up today and make any last minute comments that we should consider and think about for next week? Even words of wisdom? Nobody?
Where'd you find the wire hanger, John?
A wire hanger? Oh, you know what? I found it at a restaurant. So I'll end with this story. I posted something on Instagram. It was like, it's good to be an old, an old guy, an old dog with an old car. And I locked my keys in the car yesterday. I have a 1976 911, a Porsche 911. I got out of my meeting and there was my car locked with the keys inside it. So I went over to this restaurant and found an good old, metal coat hanger, and was able to kind of scoop it out and pop it out, and it made me feel good. So sometimes, old dogs with old tricks can get things done. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Well, thanks guys. Really appreciate it. Awesome group always. Mark, I'm going to follow up with some other folks as well. And just always love this group and love the conversations. More to come. Make sure you get into the, work stream groups and, whatever you guys want to do, and then hit me up if there's any changes to the manifesto or the, the organizational structure that we need to consider. Love all the input I can get. So love you guys. Have a great weekend and the rest of the week.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.